everyone, this is your host Tommy Talks, and welcome back to the NSSR, where we're encouraging you to run your own race to medical school one day at a time. This is the first of a 5-part series titled Tommy Talks Tactics, 5 steps to deciding on medicine as a career. So the first step that we're going to talk about today is thinking deep. Why is it that you want to go to medicine? Why is it that you want to go to medical school? What is it about this career that is drawing you? What is it about this career that is enticing to you as something that you want to do for the rest of your life? That may sound like a big question, but it's a really important one to answer before you get into the planning process and the preparation for this, because the last thing you want is to do something that you don't actually want to do, if that makes sense. So, why medicine? There's a lot of reasons that people go into medicine. Unfortunately, not all of them are great. Some people go into it for prestige. Some people go into it for money. Some people go into it because they genuinely want to help people. Some people go into it because they love science. Some people go into it, unfortunately, because they're pressured from other people and they feel like they have to do this. So why is all this important? So when I came into college, I was premed, to be honest with you. And I wasn't premed for me. I was premed because it was the quote-unquote African thing to do. No shade to any Africans out there. I am a Nigerian American, and so I'm very proud of my heritage, but I'll describe what I mean. So, as a Nigerian American, your parents want you to be the best version of you that you can be. Your family wants you to be successful because, they want bragging rights. I mean, hey, parents love bragging rights. But at the same time, it has become this expectation that children will do well. But unfortunately, the definition of well is very restricted. If you are a doctor, a pharmacist, a lawyer, an engineer, maybe an accountant, I'm probably missing a couple in the healthcare field, but those kind of careers are classified as the good ones. The legitimate ones, if you will. And so anyone that kind of strays from that interest is not looked well upon. So a lot of people come in to college, as I did, with that mindset of this is all you know, this is all, your community has told you, that medicine is the way to go to be successful. And I mean, that's true to a sense, and as long as you want to do it, right? So I come into college and I'm pre-med and I'm just lolly-dying, going about my life, excited to, become a doctor, whatever that means. And I stumble across, well, actually I didn't stumble across, they made us take it. At my school, they made us take a class called PHP 1105. So basically that's a class for everyone that comes into college thinking they want to be pre-med. And I know now why they put it at the beginning, because what they essentially do is they'll break down what it takes to be a doctor. First of all, the timeline. So you have to do 4 years of medical school, then you have to do 3 to 8 years of residency, depending on what specialty you pick. Then if you want to subspecialize, you have to do a fellowship, and there's all kinds of things that can happen in between those timelines. So when I listened to all of that and I said, that's a lot of time. I don't know if that's something that I want to do, especially because I wasn't feeling medicine like that anyway. That was all I knew. So, of course, there is that time for confrontation where you have to go tell your parents that you are not feeling the doctor pathway anymore. And I waited till around my birthday so that way they wouldn't be too mad at me. But, you got to come correct. For anyone who is in a similar position to where I was, and you want to talk about possibly not doing medicine, you cannot just come in and be like, by the way, I don't want to be a doctor, I just want to be a rapper, I would just do me, peace. Yeah, your parents will spontaneously combust, and that's no bueno, okay? So, to avoid that scenario, I actually did do some homework on what were my interests, what are the things I like to do, and I decided that I was going to go another route, which I had planned out and prepared and presented to my parents. And that was why they were a little bit more amicable for me leaving the field of medicine at that time. So I'm going to put a pause on my story and highlight the reasons that I brought up what I brought up. So, important things to think deep about. 1, what would you do if you couldn't do medicine? If there was some weird reason why you could not be a doctor, is there anything else that you could see yourself doing? And the reason I say you should think about that question is not to dissuade you from pursuing medicine, and rather it's for you to think about what are the things that you need to have in a career to function. right? For me, I know that I need to be able to teach. That is something that's very big on my mind. I love to teach people. I love to mentor people. I just love to be in that position to be able to impart knowledge and communicate things and make people understand something that may be confusing to them. So that's something that I want to do. And so when I thought about that question, it's like, I could teach, I could do these things, but when I thought about it more, there were more elements of what I wanted to do that would not be wholly fulfilled by one profession other than medicine. And so that's why I say you should think well about that question, because if you find that there's nothing else that can satisfy you and, cater to your interests and your calling like medicine can, then by all means pursue medicine. If there's anything that you have even the slightest question about whether or not it could fulfill you as a human being, as a professional, please explore that. That's part of what college is for. Look into it and ask questions, find people who are doing those fields and see if that is what your inkling is towards. Because again, like I said before, the last thing you want to do is prepare for something you actually don't want to do. Okay, moving on. The next question you need to think about is, okay, so I'm interested in medicine. How have my experiences prepared me for medicine? And why do I say that? Because the reflection that is needed to go into medicine is one that needs to be shaped by your experiences. And so to be able to be the best physician and the best medical student, you have to be able to sit with what you have gone through, sit with the things you have experienced, and figure out what have those things taught me about who I am, one, and about who I want to be, two. Right? So for people who have shadowed a doctor or whatever, and they say, that's why I want to become a doctor. Okay, pause. There's a difference from following someone around and saying you want to be just like them. What did you notice about their personality? What did you notice about the way they related to patients? What did you notice about their demeanor? What was it about that field, about watching them, that attracted you to that profession? So sitting down to really think about that, for people who unfortunately have been on the other end of medicine as a patient or have been a caregiver, what about that experience is spurring you to be a physician? What about that experience is spurring you to change what you saw or to emulate it, depending on what the scenario was, right? So sitting down to really reflect on these experiences and how they've shaped you, what they've brought out in you, or what they've given you, will help you a long way when you get into the application process, when you get into the interview cycle and people ask you, why is it that you want to do medicine? What exactly about your story is pushing you in this direction? The other thing that I would say you should think about is, what makes a good physician? What do you think makes a good physician? What have you seen? What makes a bad physician? Because on the other end, right, we've seen negative examples of things that we're like, I don't want to do that. Definitely think about those things as well, because you can be cognizant to when you see them happen and say, okay, that's not an example that I want to follow, right? So thinking about the good and the bad are both important. Next, think about your non-clinical experiences. So we're talking about medicine, being a patient, being a caregiver, or shadowing someone. Think about your non-clinical experiences. For those of us that have a wobbly road to medicine, like I did, I kind of dipped out of medicine and then came back in. Or for people who altogether, left college and then decided to come back to med school or had an interesting path along the way. What about that aspect of your story draws you to medicine, right? So what is it about your current profession that you don't necessarily like and you think would be remedied by a career in medicine? What is it in you that is not satisfied with where you are right now? What are the things that your story has brought you through and engendered in you that you think would be a good fit with working with patients? What compassion has come out of you that you think you would be able to give to the people that you serve as a physician? Things like that I think are important to reflect on, because someday you're going to be in an interview and someone is going to say, so I see that you've done X, Y, and Z. Can you tell me a little bit about that? They want to know about that experience, but they also want to know why that experience was significant to you and why it made you who you are. So rounding this out, I'm just going to give you some pro tips on how to make this a lot easier for yourself. One, keep a journal. Always keep a journal. I don't care if it's like your email, if it's just a Word document on your computer, if you handwrite it like I do. keep a journal, keep a log. If you do an activity, whether it's a volunteering activity, it's a work activity, or you happen to be sitting down and reflecting, just like, after watching this video, you say, I think I'm actually going to reflect today. If you are reflecting, please write it down, because these thoughts are what are going to help you when you're writing out your application, when you're writing out your resume, when you're speaking to someone in an interview. And it's important to record them as you thought them in those moments, right? So keep a journal, keep a dialogue with yourself of what you're thinking about your experiences, where you are, what they've taught you, because we're human. We're going to forget these things. So after years and years and years of going through things, it's very nice for me to pick up a journal and flip through it and see where I was at that specific time in my mind. And it'll help me as I write my narrative of why I'm interested in medicine, if that makes sense. So journaling is very, very important in any way, shape, or form that you prefer to do it. The next thing that I always say is never delete any emails. Please don't delete emails, especially if you use them as a primary medium of communication. So for me, whenever I'm doing an activity, usually I'll email the person that's in charge and say, hey, I'm happy to be here. I'm looking for more information, anything that you have for me. And they'll send me a lot of information telling me about what I'm about to do, whether it's a volunteering activity or it's a project I'm working on, etc. So my email inbox is usually full of details that I always forget. And so when I was filling out my applications as a pre-med student, and even now as I'm applying for residency, emails were clutch for me to be able to go back and get those details, because when you're filling out the application, they're going to ask you, 1, how many hours did you complete? 2, between when and when did you complete these hours? 3, who was the supervisor for these things? Things like that you're not like, who did I work with again? So never delete your emails, because you're going to find those details right in there. So please hold on to those. And that'll also help you reflect, because sometimes I scroll through my email when I'm looking for something. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I did that. And I can go back and write something about it, about what I learned, what I didn't learn, what I didn't like, etc. So the point of this video is just to encourage you, please think deep, sit down and really reflect. Don't just run into medicine. Please sit down and think about why it's right for you. It's okay not to have all the answers at once, because reflection is a process, but I encourage you to begin that process now, so that way you can make the best decisions for you and you can orient yourself in the best way to be successful, because you ultimately will be. This thing is a not so smooth road, but at the same time, it takes some deliberate purpose and some deliberate intent to be able to make it work. All right, guys, thank you so much for bearing with me for these 12 minutes or so. I just thought I would encourage you with something else other than an interview. There will be an interview coming up next week. I'm super excited about who it's going to be with. You guys may know him already, but I think it's good for you guys to hold on and see. So again, this has been your host, Tommy Talks. This is the first of 5-part series. Check out the next video in this series that'll come up right after that interview I discussed, and we'll talk about the next step of thinking about medicine as a career for you. All right, guys, peace out. Have a great day and stay encouraged. Bye.